Hello there, and welcome to Existential Sunday. My name is Corey. If we haven't met, nice to meet you. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a speaker, a podcaster. I think I've covered it all. Writer. And what you're watching right now is Existential Sunday, which is a weekly broadcast that's an extension of the podcast. So welcome to all of you who are watching live on Facebook or YouTube, or watching on the replay on Facebook or YouTube, or even on Instagram, which is what most of you wind up doing. Welcome to all of you in the comments saying good morning and hello. I will come back later and say hi to all of you. Feel free right now, okay, wherever you're watching this, feel free. If you are someone who's watched Existential Sunday before, feel free to share it. Feel free to tag people in the comments. No one ever has to ask my permission. And if you're watching this for the first time via replay or live, you can wait to see if I say anything worth sharing and then share it then. But those of you who trust that I will say something worth sharing, you can share it now. Real quick too, for those of you who were part of the Patreon Zoom last week, that was like the highlight of my week. So thanks so much, like, to all of you. That was so awesome. I so was filled with life to have, like, you know, all of you, to see your faces, be able to interact with you and have a conversation with you about last week's topic of enemies and love and what all that means. So that was awesome. Loved it. Great. Thank you so much. Hopefully in 2021, we'll be able to do more stuff like that, but only like do it live, like in person. Knock on wood. Hopefully the coronavirus is more under control and not spreading in the same way. And maybe the vaccine will allow us to be able to have those sorts of connections again. I really, really look forward to that in 2021. So fingers crossed, hopefully we can do that. I want to talk today about a couple different things that have like come up over the last week or so, and I'm pretty passionate about them. So once I get like rolling on those things, I need you to like offer me some grace, because I don't even know what all I will say, but I can feel the rumbling. Like I can feel it and know that when I start talking about it, especially naming some names of people who I have seen out publicly being ridiculous, I just don't know what I don't even know what I'm going to say. Okay. So just bear with me. But I want to start though here by saying that I haven't really talked about the holiday season. I haven't really talked about Advent or Christmas. I do come from the Christian tradition, for those of you that don't know that. But one of the reasons I haven't talked about it is because I don't feel adequate to talk about Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or any of the other holidays or traditions that are part of this wonderful season that we call the holiday season. And for those of you that are like up in arms about Christ being taken out of Christmas, I think it's a little bit immature of you, because you're not the only people who have a holiday this time of year. It's not just Christmas. There's many holidays and traditions that happen. So when we say happy holidays, that should not be a diss to you unless you are a supremacist, which means if you're a supremacist, anytime anyone else gets any shine, you can't stand it because you think all the shine should be on you. So anyway, over the last several years, as I've started to think about the Christmas tradition and read about it, I've had this like transformation. Okay. And those of you that are Christians that are still watching beyond what I just said, bear with me, because I think some of this may be a little challenging to you. I have shifted from viewing the birth narratives from both Matthew and Luke, from thinking about those as pieces of history, to thinking about those the way they were intended to be, which is myth and legend. And myth and legend does not necessarily mean not true. Sometimes it can be not true or not like historically accurate. In fact, a lot of scholars, I say most scholars, believe that the birth narratives are the least historically accurate parts of the Jesus narratives, of the synoptic gospels, if you will. So, and here's why that matters, right? To shift from looking at this as like straight history to looking at it as myth and legend, I think positions it in a way that makes it fit more into what Matthew and Luke were probably intending to communicate. So the best way to like sort of understand this is to think about the tropes that we see in hero films. Whenever you see like a movie about Superman or Batman or Spider-Man or Wonder Woman or Black Panther, God rest his soul, like you see these like, you see this like very similar struggle with power and cast members, like who's cast around them. You see this very similar like tension that they have about what it means to be a savior versus a destroyer. You see an adversary, you see them like discovering they have power, and these are how the stories are told. And in the first century, when these stories were circulating through the world, through the Greek and Roman and Jewish world, these stories about Jesus, they were circulating during a time when people of note had these immaculate stories about their birth, about how they came to be, how they came to power. They would begin with their origin stories. The Caesars, Herod, anybody the Romans put in power, they also circulated these stories about how they came to be, about how they were like the sons of deity. And Matthew and Luke, as they're telling their story about Jesus, are telling a story in a similar vein, which makes them like strikingly political. Like this is very much stories of politics, and you have to actually look no further than like the Mary song in Luke, which is called the Magnificat. If you look at that song, look at those words, which talked about the mighty being pulled down from their thrones. That is very much a political statement. Like imagine right now if someone were to talk about Jesus through the context of now that Jesus is here, Trump has to leave office. Like that is equivalent of what she's saying. Now that Jesus is here, the mighty are going to be pulled down from their thrones. This is like the story that is very political. And as I've learned how political the origin stories of Jesus were, I start to go, why is it then that like that this is like one of the foundational stories? Why is it that like all my time in church, or most of my time in church, there's very little conversation about politics, about power, about how we wield power? I'm going to take another liberty here, right? This is Corey. This is me speaking from what I understand. I believe that Luke and Matthew, in that when they're telling these stories, the point of these stories is not to tell you exactly how Jesus was born, but more so to communicate the difference between how Jesus wields power and how Caesar wields power. Because you have to remember, they didn't write these in chapters. They just wrote a book. And there's a full story that this birth narrative is a part of that is supposed to communicate something else about the rest of the story that they're telling. And they are telling a story about Jesus over against Caesar and Herod, saying that there is a way of wielding power that is Caesar's way, that is about taxation and military might and about taking advantage of the poor, about having no awareness or conscience about the disenfranchised and the marginalized. There's that way of using power, or there's the way of Jesus using power, which is why in his birth narrative, you find women, shepherds who were the like lowest of the low. You find these foreigners. Like you find these things in the Jesus story throughout the story of Jesus, especially in Luke, where people who have no business being part of the story get to be a part of the story. And Luke and Matthew are saying to you who are reading the story, which one looks more like the kind of power, more like the kind of way that you think is virtuous? Like which one is more virtuous? Who's better, Jesus or Caesar, after you read these stories? Which is very political, like super political. So with that as like this, knowing the time of year that we're in a very political time of year, if you take it from a sort of tradition standpoint, I wanted to talk about a better way to pro-life. Because over the last couple of weeks, there have been these federal executions, which, by the way, I saw this. I think Shane Claiborne mentioned this, and I saw it from my friend Becca Epley, that in the last 6 months, we've had more federal executions than we had in the last 57 years. And I've discovered that as you start talking about the death penalty, as you start talking about the state-sanctioned murder of people, that naturally the conversation tends to shift from that to, well, we got to talk about the abortion. We got to talk about all the innocent babies that we're killing. And vice versa, to be fair. To be fair, it happens. It also happens the other way around, because when Sean Foyt, I'm going to say his name correctly, and I'm not going to say it the way I really want to say it. When Sean Foyt tweeted at Raphael Warnock, Reverend Raphael Warnock, after Reverend Raphael Warnock said that he was pro-life, Sean made some like reference to an Old Testament idol, Old Testament God that people would sacrifice babies to, and said, "Are you a pastor of Moloch?" And it's such a trash ass attack on a black politician, and I can't stand it. And it made me ill. But to be fair, when Sean brought that up, naturally people were like, "Hey, Sean, what about?" And I'll get to the what about for Sean in a moment. So whataboutism happens on both sides of political arguments, right? This to quote cool, like way of engaging in political discourse is, I do it, you do it, everyone does that. So I'm not going to sit here and act like that's trash and nobody should ever do it. But I do think that we should be judicious in how we wield that thing, because when we're having a conversation about the death penalty, it really does make for a poor discourse, a poor dialogue, when we start bringing up other things that we're not talking about in the moment. It's barbaric that we still kill people. And in the case of Brandon Bernard, which you can read, you can look it up, read about it online. There's no question that he committed crime. No question that he was a part of, and he was he burned up a car where people were inside the car. And the argument that's being made on his behalf, or was being made on his behalf, was that the people were already dead when he burned the car. He may or may not have known that, but either way, he was an 18-year-old who committed this crime. He was a year older than Kyle Rittenhouse, who went into Milwaukee at a Black Lives Matter rally with an assault rifle and killed 2 people. And now the same folks that are advocates for, or would say that Brandon deserved to die, would say that Kyle Rittenhouse is a patriot. I'll let you determine why that's the case. You can maybe draw that conclusion yourself, because I don't have all the time in the world to go down that whole road. But you can see that, like, in our society, and when we have these political conversations, they get super messy, and they get super messy when we stop talking about the actual thing and start trying to make a point about something in the middle of a discourse. When we decide, I don't want to let your story be a part of mine. I don't want to hear what you have to say. I want to hold on to the narrative that I have about this thing, and I don't want my mind to be changed. This is like fundamentally the way that Caesar and them were with power, is that they wanted to continue to push the narrative that they were pushing. They were about advancing their ideas throughout the entire world. They were about advancing their power throughout the entire world. And there was nothing that was going to stop them. And now in our day and age, we have so many people with their politics that are like, this is what I think, and I'm moving forward with this, and I want everybody to think this way. And anyone who doesn't think this way is an idiot. And I just want to plow people over with my ideas. And I'm not willing to let anything else into the way I think about it. And because when we talk about the death penalty, we often have to bring up abortion, and people want to, bring that up. And we're having this discourse about what it means to be pro-life. And I do think that we need to redefine what it means to be pro-life, or maybe even get rid of the term altogether. Don't know. Because what happens, especially when we talk about abortion, is that if you are not pro-life, then therefore you are an advocate of death. Like the way that I hear evangelicals talk about abortion with their megaphones on their social media street corners is as if we have a nation full of female sociopaths who cannot wait to get pregnant so that they can know what it feels like to murder an innocent child who cannot defend themselves. Like, that's the way it's projected. That's the way you would think abortion works, is that there's a bunch of people in line waiting just to get pregnant so that they can be murderers. Very little conversation about how abortion adversely affects poor communities. And when I say poor communities, because we live in a white supremacist state, that is normally Black and brown communities, where people who do not have the resource, the health, the education, the infrastructure to raise children in healthy environments, make the decision that they don't want to bring up children in that environment. And we look at those people and demonize them for making that decision, rather than having conversations about renewing the environments that they are in themselves, so that they can bring children into the world in a way that they are supported and cared for. But not only that, let me say this. I live in a household with 4 women. I'm the only dude here in this house. And all 4 of those women, once a month, experience something that I will never experience in their bodies. In their bodies, they experience something that I won't ever experience in my body. The effect that it has on their emotions, the effect that it has on their bodies, the effects that it has on how they feel and what they think, and all of these things. I will never, ever in my life know what that feels like. So you know what happens whenever they start having a conversation about what's happening in their bodies? I put that church finger up and I walk out of the room, or at least out of the conversation, or I turn the TV up, or I go do something, because I have no business in that conversation, because I have neither the medical, scientific expertise or the experiential expertise to be engaged deeply in that conversation. And certainly, like, what would any of you think if I turned the camera on in my house and the people around my table start talking about what they experience in their bodies once a month, and I, who's neither a medical professional nor a person who experiences that, take the lead on that conversation because I'm a man and have a louder, deeper voice, and because I'm strong? What would it look like if I got to do that? Yeah, you're right. It would look crazy as hell. And that is what it looks like to see so many evangelical Christian men with their chest poked out and their deep, bassy voices talking about something that they are not medically versed in, not medical professionals, nor are they people who know what it is to carry a life in their bodies. Again, since it's Christmas, and since we're in that holiday season, let's remember what these narratives were about. It was about how you wield power. One, Caesar, wields power in a way that I'm dominant, I'm stronger, I'm bigger, therefore everyone has to listen to me. And Jesus' narrative comes to us with a, let's listen to women. Let's hear Mary's song. Let's listen to the poor. This is the difference, that, like, when there is something that doesn't affect you the same way that it affects someone else, maybe you should just step back and go, I ain't really, you know what, let me listen. Before I jump in with both feet and say, this is immoral and no one should ever. And how could you call yourself a Christian and yada, yada, yada. Before we start doing all those things, could we consider the fact that sometimes people are left with really, really, really bad decisions, bad choices in front of them. And they make these decisions because we as a society leave them on their own to make them. I don't know the person, and maybe there's a person who's watching, and I'm sure that when you start talking about things like this, there may be people on both sides who's like, Corey, actually, I can't believe you said that. That's true. I'm a human being. I probably will say and have said something that is offensive, and that was not my intent. I'm just sharing with you what my thoughts are. I don't know the person who is such a maniac and so cavalier that they go, I'm just going to have sex when I want to. And if I get pregnant, oh, well, I'll just kill it. I don't know the person who has that mentality. The other thing I find interesting about this particular conversation, and I'm going to wrap here, tie these things together, wrap, and we'll go home or go on about our day, is that we have very little discourse about the dudes involved in these pregnancies. I mean, in case you didn't know, what's not happening is that women are not walking down the street minding their own business and go, oh, there's a baby in there. That's not how that happens. And in case nobody's ever explained to you how this works, there has to be two people involved in some way, shape, or form in order for someone to get pregnant. We have very little conversation about what laws there should be to regulate men who decide not to be a part of the pregnancies. Men, when it comes to getting women pregnant to begin with. I wonder, like, how outraged, how upset would men be if there was like a push to say that if you don't intend to have a child, if it was not your intention to have a child and you do not use protection, that's illegal. We are making it illegal to have any sort of intercourse without men wearing condoms. We don't have this kind of conversation. We don't talk like that. We don't discuss those sorts of things. We look at the women and we go, hey, you can't do that with your body because there's a baby in there. It's an innocent life and you shouldn't take it, and you're evil and wicked if you do. We need to stop that. We need to stop that. We need to stop, full stop saying stuff like that. That's you saying that kind of stuff is more wicked than the person who is left with a desperate choice. And in a free moral society, people should be able to choose for themselves what they're going to do with their bodies, who they love. This is what a free moral society should be. What we should not be able to do is do harm to one another, which is what Sean F word is doing across the country with a coronavirus, where he is selling t-shirts that literally say Jesus the super spreader. Let me be very clear about this. Almost 300,000 people and counting have died in this country from this virus. More than 1 million people have contracted it. The CDC, again, scientists, doctors, people whose job it is to tell us about this, are saying, do not be outside without a mask. Do not gather. Do not have large gatherings. Be 6 feet apart. Be responsible. Like this whole, it was interesting. Then we have a bunch of evangelical Christians going, my body, my choice, when it comes to wearing a mask. The mask is not about protecting yourself from the virus. If you want to run out there and get the virus, go get the virus. But do not make that choice for me by not wearing a mask. Choosing for me that I have to get the virus now because you don't want to wear a mask. That you spread the virus across the country, Sean F word, because you have this false sense of persecution. That's only persecution because you're so used to being supreme. You're so used to being a supremacist that anything that makes you pause or stop, or I have to think about somebody other than myself, then you feel like that's persecution. It's not persecution. It's responsibility. It's being responsible. It's thinking about people other than yourself. No, our society should not be able to do harm to other people. We have all kinds of laws that say, I can't just walk in somebody else's house and kill them. And don't spare me the equivalencies between everything I just said and abortion. I understand that baby inside that body cannot protect themselves or fend for themselves. And I applaud the nobility, the true nobility of people who really from their heart of hearts cannot understand, like, why someone would choose to harm that child inside the womb that can't defend themselves. I applaud that nobility. But it is far more complex than just that. There is complexity to this that we cannot act like it's not there. And we certainly should not be a society that tells a woman that when the doctor says to her, it's you or the baby, that woman does not get to make that choice. That when a woman has someone force themselves on them, that woman can't make the choice for themselves. When a woman has a family member abuse power and force themselves on them, that woman can't choose. What kind of society is that? I've said it before, I'll say it again. We've had a society where women didn't get to choose. In that society, women were forced to have abortions. They had no choice. If the man said, I don't want the baby, you got to get rid of it. We knew that society sucked. And now we're advocating for similar society just on the other side, or at least some of us are. And I personally, and I'm the one with the microphone right now, I don't see that. I also don't see a world where state-sanctioned execution is wholesome and good. Again, Brandon Bernard was 18 years old. Scientists are telling us now that your brain is not fully formed till you're 25. All indications are that from the time he went to jail till the time they executed him, he was becoming, he was changing, he had learned, his last words were an apology to the families, that he was rehabbing. He was becoming a better person. But in the midst of that, regardless of that, we killed him. Because a federal execution means that it doesn't matter what state he's in, we killed him. Our tax dollars, our federal tax dollars killed him. And our federal tax dollars, I think, are going to kill another 7 people unless we are able to band together or something miraculous happens and we are able to save those lives. Those people are going to die. I do not believe that we should be, no matter how heinous the crime. I know that there are some of you who disagree with this, and that's fine. That's what this space is. You can disagree in the comments on Instagram and on Facebook. I mean, I'm fine with that disagreeing, as long as that disagreeing is not Caesar's type of disagreeing. It's like, oh, you're such an idiot. I can't believe you said that. Anytime we don't allow space for another human being to be a human being and differ with us, we've set ourselves up to be Caesar. We set ourselves up to be a supremacist, be a person that thinks we're better than everybody else. I'm not with that. I don't engage in that. I don't believe in a society where we tell people who have committed murder, we tell our society, we tell everyone who's watching that if you kill someone, that we're going to kill you back. This is the difference between Caesar and Jesus. There is a way of meeting violence with violence. That was Caesar's way. There's a way of meeting hate with hate, which is Caesar's way. Then there's a way of meeting violence with peace, with justice, meeting hate with love, meeting wickedness with kindness. That's a better way. That's a better way of being pro-life than taking a side that says, I'm this or I'm that. The better way of being pro-life is to say all life is precious, that Black lives matter, without having to say all lives matter. And the reason why that's a better way to pro-life is because when I recognize that there's an outcry from a society who has a white supremacist boot on their neck, it behooves me not to try to take away from what they're saying and demonize them, but to say, if I really am pro-life, then I recognize that where life and where people are suffering, that's where I'm needed the most, to come alongside those people, link arms with them and say, yeah, absolutely, Black lives absolutely matter. And the Black lives of these men and women, predominantly Black and brown people who have been executed by the state and by the federal government, they matter still. They did wrong, yes, but their lives still matter. And we, those of us watching this, who are contenders for a better world, we who are watching this, who are just like sort of going through this deconstruction and decolonization of our worldview, we should be, I don't want to shit on you. It's better, I believe, that we be people who look at our world from the bottom up instead of top down, who look at our world and go, okay, Black woman, young Black woman who is now pregnant, who lives in a poor community with poor resources and poor food and poor health care. How can we take care of you? As opposed to what we tend to do from our ivory tower in Caesar's palace. We look at them and say, you better not abort that baby. I ain't gonna do shit to help you, but you better not abort that baby. We can do better. We can do better than state-sanctioned murder. We're one of the last countries in the world that still does that barbaric practice. And we can do better than demonizing and trying to take away the rights for women to make painful choices. And we can do better than leaving them alone to make those choices for themselves. This is a heavy one. I can't imagine. I haven't seen the comments yet. Can't imagine what they're going to be like. I'm about to go look at them now. Grace and peace to all of you.